80. Following is an interview with Eraka Rouzorondu, CEO of Ma'at Enterprises, on WPFW 89.3 FM in Washington, D.C., conducted on Wednesday, June 21st, 2017. The program name is What's at Stake, with Fahima Sek sitting in for hostess Verna Avery Brown.
Failing to signal a lane change.
Riding in your girlfriend's car with a child in the back.
Running to the bathroom in your own apartment.
Selling cigarettes outside of a corner store.
Riding a commuter train.
Walking home with a friend.
Making eye contact.
Selling CDs outside of a supermarket.
Wearing a hoodie.
Walking away from police.
Walking toward police.
Missing a front license plate.
Holding a fake gun in the park in Ohio.
Driving with a broken brake light. Sitting in your car before your bachelor party.
Walking up the stairwell of your apartment building.
Calling for help after an accident.
Holding a fake gun in Virginia.
On the way to Bible study.
Holding a fake gun in Walmart.
Laughing.
Holding a wallet.
For attending a birthday party.
Doing absolutely nothing.
Not servile enough. Go to weareheremovement.com to tell President Obama and Congress that the time for change is now. We demand radical transformation to heal a long history of systemic racism so that all Americans have the equal right to live and to pursue happiness.
That was from 23 Ways You Can Be Killed If You're a Black Person in America. And that was put together by Alicia Keys and a number of her friends in the industry, from Beyonce to Chris Rock and a whole host of folks. You can go online and actually see the video from that. The last time I had the pleasure, I don't want to say pleasure, but I had the opportunity to have a conversation with Eraka Rouzorondu, who is a nationally acclaimed empowerment specialist, was when Philando Castile was murdered by the officer. Since then, President Trump has been elected, and quite recently that officer has been acquitted of all charges, and the video has recently been released. Sister Eraka Rouzorondu, I want to welcome you back to the airways of WPFW and What's at Stake, and perhaps you can help us make sense of what is going on.
Thank you so much for having me, Fahima, and good morning to WPFW listeners. I will share with you my insights and recommendations on how we can internally make sense and move to make external sense of our existence in this country. For those of you who may have to run, I'd like to give my website. It's maatenterprises.com. That's MAAT enterprises.com, and get information there on me and my work. Wow. How do you make sense of the nonsensical? First, you have to think about it and not just feel about it. And what we as black people and largely white people have been doing is feeling about it instead of thinking about it. You know, racism has a history. It has traceable antecedents. And if you line up the facts, you arrive at some pretty clear logical conclusions. The challenge is that those conclusions are uncomfortable. And they require us as individual human beings to completely rewrite our perception of reality. And that's why there, I believe, has been resistance, even among those who do know the facts. Most of us don't know the facts, but even among those of us who do, that's where the block is. We simply can't wrap our head around the nonsense and the truth behind the nonsense. First of all, I want to say I'm an empowerment specialist, and I define power as the ability to create your own reality. The ability to create your own reality. So the first thing I would say for people of color, African Americans in particular, is that this is a conversation for us to have amongst ourselves. Not that there aren't ways in which black people and white people can collaborate to address racism and white supremacy. Not that there aren't things that we can do together. However, the bottom line is only we can save ourselves. So the idea that we're going to somehow achieve legislative or policy empowerment that will alleviate the situation, I don't believe has a foundation, in fact, or a grasp on the reality of being black in America. All right? So my company is Ma'at Enterprises, and it has 4 subsidiaries. I want to talk about 2 of them. Ascension Productions is a subsidiary that deals strictly with cultural empowerment, strictly and exclusively for African Americans, because the conversations we need to have and what we need to do are exclusive to us. Progressive Human Being is another subsidiary. This does empowerment work for all people, regardless of race, color, creed, sexual identity and preference, et cetera, et cetera. It's about being a progressive human being. So I want to talk about this issue from both of those perspectives. I have a presentation called The Good News About Racism. Very proud of that presentation.
That was the first format that I saw. And quite interestingly enough, most of the people in the room were people of Caucasian descent.
Yes, yes. That presentation is sponsored by Progressive Human Being. It is multiracial. And what I do in The Good News About Racism is define racism and white supremacy in such a way that empowers us as individuals to, A, protect ourselves against the psychological and spiritual trauma associated with those things, and B, to come up with definitive strategies for mitigating at minimum and eliminating racism and white supremacy. Those are possible. It's possible. All right? So let's start with the definition of racism, the working definition that I offer. Racism is a mental illness rooted in ignorance and xenophobia. Xenophobia is an unreasoned fear of the unknown. And when you listen to the Alicia Keys piece that you just played, when you listen to the justifications that have been given for the abject murder of another human being because of their race, they are unreasonable. They're not linked to reason. So we're talking about a mental illness. And when you have a perception of reality that leads you to believe that because you are afraid of someone, you have the right to kill them, that's a mental illness. It's delusional and it's paranoid. If we were talking about individual behaviors, there would be no hesitation in diagnosing these conditions and treating them. And I submit that if it's true for an individual, it's true for a collective. Also, by understanding that racism is a mental illness, those of us who are subjected to it can put it in a perspective that helps us defend against the trauma of living in that experience. It's one thing to say, my God, I'm hated. I'm hated for who I am. I am absolutely insecure in my citizenship, my life, my liberty. I'm insecure in being a citizen of the United States of America. And all of that's real. And that has to be addressed. But we can think about that, not just feel about it. And I'm suggesting the way we think about it is that we are dealing with sick people being sick. If you're walking down the halls of a mental institution, and I submit for black people in America, this country is a mental institution.
Indeed.
If you're walking down the halls of a mental institution and you are attacked by a resident, you're going to have an emotional reaction. You're going to initially be angry. You're going to initially, of course, defend yourself. And you're going to feel some kind of way about that. However, if you then stop and say, wait a minute, I'm in a mental institution and that person is insane. So I'm not going to allow myself to invest myself emotionally in that person's insanity. I'm going to defend myself. I'm going to move differently through these hallways. I'm going to have ways of defending myself and protecting myself. But I don't need to internalize that person's mental illness. And I know that what I'm saying may be difficult to grasp, but it is the only way that we, as black people, are going to be able to remain vigilant and strong enough to do what we have to do to defend ourselves, our men, our women, and our children against genocide. And we are dealing with genocide. If I were to articulate all of the conditions, economically, politically, health-wise, we are talking about the decimation of our race. That's unequivocal. And so if we're going to steel ourselves to do what we need to do, we have to think about racism instead of just feel about it and navigate it in a way that empowers us to remain strong. And I submit that that definition allows you to do that.
Now, we're going to take a break in about a moment, and I want to know, are you open to taking some phone calls?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I want to invite those in our listening audience to give us a call at 202-588-0893. That's 202-588-0893 when we come back from the break. And I want to also say you are listening to Pacifica Radio, WPFW 89.3 on your FM dial, or www.wpfwfm.org. I am Fahima Sek, and
take an audible journey to Cuba with District Timba every Tuesday from 3 to 5 p.m. right here on WPFW 89.3 FM or online at WPFWFM.org. Your host, Mimi Machado Luces. Music curated by DJ Darwin Peña, plus surprise visits from artists, filmmakers y cubanos de toda parte del mundo. District Timba, Cuba Beyond the Embargo, on your Jazz and Justice Radio.
Sister Eraka, now the last time we talked, as I mentioned earlier, it was right after Fernando Castillo had been murdered. And, after a long litany of other incidences where the police indiscriminately murdered someone and they were summarily, they hadn't been acquitted. You had the brother in Walter Scott down in South Carolina. There was Sandra Bland. Prior to our talking, none of these cases had been mitigated. Since that time, Fernando Castillo's murderer has been acquitted. The policewoman who murdered the gentleman, I forget his name, it's just too many to even recount. And again, this was prior to the election of Donald Trump. There are some that purports that a lot of this is a backlash from us actually having had an African American president. What say you? It does appear that many of these people have become emboldened as a result of Trump being elected. But of course, the racism, the white supremacy, the xenophobia, the hatred has always been there. But it appears to me that many of these folks have taken license and feel that it's okay for them to be racist and xenophobic and to actually act upon it. What say you?
Three comes in. Let's understand that the people who went out as vigilantes to capture and return runaway slaves. A. The Ku Klux Klan. Okay, so we know about them. In 1979, the Ku Klux Klan held a press conference, and they announced that they were no longer going to be marching in the streets in their sheets and white hoods, that they were going to put on business suits, and that they were going to infiltrate the educational system, the political system, and the law enforcement system. They announced it. In 2006, the FBI issued a report, now the FBI, saying that the infiltration of law enforcement by neo-Nazis and white supremacists was the single greatest threat to domestic security. That was in 2006, before Barack Obama. And if it was at that level then, what do we think it is in 2017? The proliferation of those organizations, neo-Nazis, racists, was 1,000-fold, quite literally, after his election. So what we're seeing here is the Klan legalized. And I'm not saying that every officer is a homicidal racist. However, those are the facts. All right. A. B. Another fact. There has been absolutely no remorse expressed by the power structure in law enforcement all the way up to the Attorney General's office. In fact, they've been crystal clear that they support the actions of these officers. And if we're talking about 30 years of infiltrating law enforcement, we have to assume that neo-Nazis have risen to the very highest levels of the law enforcement on a national as well as state and local level. So there's no question that they are hunting. If you look at the videos, either we're talking about people suffering from the mental illness of extreme paranoia when you shoot a child in 6 seconds, or we're talking about hunting. And many of those videos are very clearly hunting animals. We're not seen as human by neo-Nazis and white supremacists. They do not see us as human. These are the facts. They're irrefutable. So if this is the reality, why are we continuing to petition law enforcement to correct itself? And now that President Trump has been elected and has made it crystal clear that not only does he support this behavior, he's going to roll back the 6 or 7 things that we did manage to achieve in terms of police oversight, rolling them back. Black people, the United States of America has never intended for us to have full citizenship. All of that's been propaganda. It has never been the systemic intention. I'm not saying that there haven't been presidents and individuals who have had that as their goal, but systemically, we are looking at a system that has never been designed to protect us. It's not even designed to protect white people. The police system protects property. So, if those are the facts, the question becomes, what are we going to do about it? And we're not even having that conversation because we're continuing to make moral appeals to an immoral system.
Well, And I'm going to go to the callers in a moment, but I just wanted to say, I think the very first situation that went viral was the Rodney King beating. And everyone knew, hey, we've got it on videotape. We've got to get justice now. And I think that's the first one that came to mind. And there's just been so many that have followed that it's too numerous to count that have been documented. And I purport that there are these things aren't increasing. They're just the fact that what technology has allowed us to see it more because of the advent of, the phone cameras and the very first.
Yeah, that's the only difference. Yeah. This has been consistent. This is consistent.
Absolutely. I'm going to go to the call. I just want to say, caller, please, we only have a limited amount of time and we want to try to get as many people in as possible. Please state your name, have your phone turned down, where you're calling from, or your question and your comment. Please be concise. Caller, are you there?
Yes.
Thank you for calling. Your name, where you're calling from, and your question or comment.
My name is Ricky Payne. I am calling. Currently, I am in Silver Spring, Maryland. And my comment is that I don't believe that these things, as far as the police brutality and the way Nubian people are being treated here in the United States will ever stop because of our birth certificate and the entire birth certificate system. We were signed over as wards of the state by our parents unknowingly at birth. So the United States feels that it has jurisdiction over each and every individual that has a birth certificate here in the United States, particularly black folks.
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much for your question and your comment, but Amadou Diallo, who was shot 41 times by the police in the Bronx, he wasn't going for his birth certificate, he was going for his wallet. But thank you very much. Do you want to go to the next call, or do you want to make a comment, Eraka?
I encourage us not to get distracted. I encourage us to be very careful about what facts we choose to focus on and whether or not they directly address the primary issues confronting us.
Next caller, question or comment. Please be concise, your name and where you're calling from.
Hi, this is Nana Malaya from DC.
Hey, Nana Malaya, how you doing, sister?
Hey, I'm fine.
I'm enjoying your son in that program. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Okay, good.
Peace, Nana.
Okay.
Question or comment, Nana?
Basically, I just wanted to give a lot of props. Eraka, your programs are always amazing. I consider myself an artist, an activist. I'm also a minister. I'm also an empowerment coach. But what I find is being idealistic and practical, that your process makes that clear. And it gives folks definite clarity as far as information and clarity about action. And I think that's what's so important, because right now things are clouded for a lot of people. They're not quite sure what to do. They know how they feel. Some people may be somewhat informed, but we need some more clarity on action. I think you provide a real clarity for introspection and then outer action. So I really want to thank you very much. And, I came to Baltimore for the last one, so when you're going to do another one, I want to know so I can be there.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I deal with solutions. And the good news about racism offers solutions not just to black people. For black people listening to what I'm saying and it's uncomfortable, but I'm saying the truth. It's true. There's a gap there that has to be bridged. And there's a way to do that. So even if you are cognizant that you're not at the place where I am, but it makes sense, and you know that you need to at least move closer to my perception of reality, I can help you do that. Go to maatenterprises.com and send me your contact information. I can let you know the next time the good news about racism and the awakening are being offered. There are solutions to these problems if we become the human beings capable of actualizing them.
Well, let's unpack that a little, because I understand that you do, and I'm just characterizing it as a rites of passage for black people, and you also do a rites of passage for white people. And again, these are white people who are willing to go through these programs. We're not doing like they did in that film where they grab people and deprogram. I think it was Drop Squad. You're not drop squatting white people. These are white people who want to acquire, they want to do something, they want to do better, and they go through your program. So talk a little bit about both of them, if you will.
Well, the Awakening I've been doing for 30 years. It is an intensive in the transformation of racial consciousness. The Power Talk that's coming up this weekend, that is an encapsulated version of the education you and I, Fahima, have been undergoing for decades. If you are black and listening to this and you understand that there is a distance between where you are and the position that I'm talking about, attend this weekend. Listen to the scholars. These aren't radical, insane, revolutionaries in terms of violent revolution. We have to undergo a revolution of consciousness, and the Power Talk lineup will absolutely introduce you to the shift in consciousness that I believe is necessary. The veridical, which is the transformation of racial consciousness for white people, is pretty much the same kind of education. White supremacy is an historical lie. When we talk about white supremacy, we talk about, oh, it's a system and it's the prison pipeline and that's true. But at its core, it is a historical lie. It is the lie that white people are superior to the other races. It is the lie that white people are superior to the other races because they have created the arts and sciences and have civilized all the savages around the world. That is a bold-faced historical lie. And the way to correct the lie is to tell the truth. And that's what I do in the Awakening, and that's what I do in the veridical. For black people, the challenge is to wake up to who we are because that truth has been taken from us. And for white people, the truth is the solution is to have a veridical perception of reality. A veridical is a verifiable fact. It's time for them to come down from the throne of supremacy to earth and understand historically what it has meant to be a white person around the world, and particularly in America. That is the only solution. That is the only core solution to white supremacy. The way to undo a lie is to tell the truth. And that's what I do through the Awakening for black people and the veridical for white people. Again, if you're interested in information on these, maatenterprises.com. That's MAAT enterprises.com.
Okay, so not to say that we can rationalize this, but to put this in context, and correct me if I'm wrong. So pretty much the prison industrial complex, the police shooting, all of these horrific things that are occurring, they are symptoms. They are latent effects of a larger issue. Am I correct?
Yes, you are. There's systems and large latent effects of two larger issues. The one that we're conscious of, which is racism and white supremacy, and the one that we forget, which is that at a satellite level, racism and white supremacy are distractions. The real deal is the 1%. The real deal is about concentrating wealth in the hands of a few people who feel justified to do so because of racism and white supremacy. But that is the overarching thrust, particularly in America, which is funded, runs by the capitalist economic system. So those are the two issues fueling it, and those two issues have to be addressed. Now, the 1% thing, that's secondary to me because my people are dying. And so I need to deal with mentally freeing our people from the mentality that allows us to allow ourselves to be subjected to this. And the appeal process to the system is symptomatic of the fact that we haven't been deprogrammed from slavery. Here we are being shot in the street. And on a core level, our response is to beg white people to validate our humanity. Hello. historically, that's not what people in our position have done. So there's two issues. It's those two issues. It's racism, white supremacy, and it's the consolidation of wealth in 1% of the population.
And it's interesting because in terms of looking at this economic factor, the haves, the 1%, that controls all of this, and to a large extent are at the heart of the matter. It's just very interesting that even though, like with this last issue with Fernando Castillo, presumably there will be a civil suit filed. Most recently, Michael Brown's family was given a settlement of an undisclosed amount, and it'll be sealed. And the thing is that this is not going to bring back these people's loved ones. It's just even though you'll have many of these cases where the police will be found having done no wrong. Amadou Diallo's mother, Katiato Diallo, she was given a settlement and she started a foundation in her son's name. And the same thing with the young man in Florida. It's been so many. George Zimmerman murdered him. It's been Trayvon Martin. His mother, wrote a book and, started a nonprofit organization. And, it's going to do, that may be helpful, but it doesn't replace the loved ones. And it just seems that the system feels that they can just, murder these people, exonerate the officer. In the case in the little boy in Ohio who was shot with a toy gun, the officer, what was the young man's name? Because I want to say these people's names.
I don't recall.
It's just so many.
I think it was Tamir Rice.
Yes, Tamir Rice.
But Fahima,
yes,
the budget is set up for all of that.
Yeah, because the officers aren't paying.
They have a line item in the budget.
Aren't paying. The officers aren't paying. It's the citizens. The money is coming from the citizens. But I just want to say that the officer that murdered Tamir Rice wasn't fired because he killed this little boy. He was fired because he lied on his job application, indicating that he was fired from a position previously where he had committed.
All right, so I want to jump in because even that conversation is about what they are doing in a system that is designed to do exactly what it's doing. The system is designed to do exactly what it's doing. It's designed to allow neo-Nazi white supremacist police officers to hunt us down with impunity. It's designed to do that. So talking about how that plays out and that, in my opinion, is not relevant. What is relevant is we are dealing with the formalization of the Ku Klux Klan. And unless we start having that conversation and start talking about what we are going to do to defend ourselves, all the rest of that is moot. The budget is set up to pay these settlements. It's part of their line item. It's okay. We're going to pay a settlement. It's okay. The system is designed to do exactly what it is doing. And until we confront that truth and start having that conversation, the rest, to me, is distraction.
So could you explain, as we near a wrap-up, how individuals can go through a process, the veridical and the awakening? Tell us, in the time we have remaining, what takes place, what will occur for a black person going through the awakening, and what will happen and what will take place for a white person that wants to change, doesn't know what to do, but wants to make a difference, wants to see a shift in terms of how things are taking place. What will take place for them, and then how they can get in touch to take part in those. So
the awakening is a historical journey. We start from 5 million years BC, when humankind originated in Eastern Africa, and we go right up to the present day. It is a revisiting of world and American history from a perspective that makes it very clear where we live today. Once we are freed from this propagandized vision that America is this melting pot and that they really, really want to see us liberated, self-determining. Once we're freed from that, we can start having real conversations about solutions. The goal of the awakening is to liberate the mind of the African American from that propaganda so that we can have the conversation as a free, self-determinative people. Instead of the goal being to integrate and live with others, how do we live with ourselves? How do we stand up for ourselves? How do we feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, educate our own children? That's the goal. And it doesn't talk about how to do that specifically. It empowers the individual to undergo the consciousness transformation that allows them to engage in that relationship. I'm not tied to the outcome. I just want us to wake up, and that is why it's called the awakening. For white people going through the veridical, it's the same thing. It's the same historical journey from then to now, so they can understand that white supremacy is a historical lie, and that all of this oppression, all the privilege that they enjoy has no foundation in fact. For them, the outcome is to do what we cannot do, which is to infiltrate the system for good. Just as it's been infiltrated by neo-Nazis, it can be infiltrated by conscious white people, so that over the same 30-year period that it took them to get to this point, we can have people in decision-making positions so that policy can genuinely be affected. If America is ever going to live up to its propaganda, then it's going to take good people being aggressively good. Good assumes itself. Evil asserts itself.
So instead,
and the veridical is about finding good white people, freeing them from the consciousness of white supremacy, and setting them out to infiltrate the systems for good.
So they will essentially, instead of, being helpful to black people and kind to black people, they will become co-conspirators in overturning the system of white supremacy.
They will become allies. They can't help us do what we got to do.
Right.
They cannot help us do what we have to do. They have their own job to do, and the veridical is about, again, transforming their racial consciousness so that those who are capable of doing so can commit to doing so.
And how will people be able to contact you to take advantage of these two? I know you said you have some coming up, not too long from now.
Yeah, the Awakening and the Veridical will be held in October and November of this year in Baltimore. If you go to maatenterprises.com, click on Ascension Productions for the information on the Awakening, and click on Progressive Human Being for information on the Veridical. You can sign up. Just sign up for information, and it'll be issued to you as soon as the details are finalized.
And for those that might be interested in contacting you directly, do you have any social media that they can follow you on?
I'm on Facebook. That's Eraka, E-R-A-K-A, Rouzorondu, R-O-U-Z-O-R-O-N-D-U. You can call me also at 1-888-771-MAAT. That's 888-771-6228.
And they can use those contacts if people are interested in getting you to come as a speaker or to do a presentation as well, I assume.
Absolutely. That's what I'm here for, bringing me to where you are. If you have a group of people who are interested in moving forward and really dealing with racism and white supremacy, dealing with it, by all means, give me a call.
Well, I want to thank you, Sister Eraka Rouzorondu, for coming once again to the airways of WPFW and trying to at least assist, in my words, not yours, assist us in deconstructing this and making sense and pointing us in the direction of a potential solution. I want to thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
To contact Eraka Rouzorondu regarding the next session of the Good News About Racism, registration for the Awakening or the Veridical, or contracting any of these presentations for your event, community, or organization, go to www.maatenterprises.com. That's M-A-A-T enterprises.com, or call 1-888-771-MAAT. That's 888-771-6228. You may also email Eraka at power at maatenterprises.com.